And when you hear that music, you know that it's time to enter the dojo. And look, Chris, man, it's you and me here in the dojo, just us two, just the two of us, like they said, Chris. And I can see I got this big smile on my face. It's because we left off last week's combined 2025, 2026, and 2027 mock draft with a lot of big names, Chris. And today in rounds 3 and 4, we're going to go over some of those names. And I, again, just want to highlight the purpose of this exercise. This is teaching Devy concepts to maybe people who aren't familiar with that. And maybe you have no idea what I mean when I say Devy. Truly in Devy, we're looking at known NFL assets and their production, roles, all of those things. And we're combining it with the current classes, and we're also looking at future classes. How do you evaluate? How do you compare them when they're all on the same board, right? Then that's what we did tonight. Again, Chris, in this continuation of last week's episode, we put them all on the board and we're seeing where the value lies. And I'm going to stop you right here, because if this is your first time listening to the Devy Dojo, you need to pause right here, go back to the channel and watch last week's episode, rounds 1 through 2, and then you can come back and it will make a little more sense.
So we're going to dive right into rounds 3 and 4 of this combined mock. And just as a quick reminder for everybody, we do these things based on an idea of superflex and tight end premium, which I feel like is what most people are doing these days. So to run through the first the first 6 picks of round 3, 301, we have Kewan Lacy, running back from next year's draft. 302, we have TreVeyon Henderson, running back from last year's draft. 303, we have Julian Sayin, quarterback of next year's draft. We have 304, Trey'Dez Green, tight end from next year's draft. 305, Ryan Coleman Williams from next year's draft. And 306, Isaac Brown from next year's draft. So just in that little chunk there, you can see that there's a lot of hype around 2027 picks.
Yeah, I feel like these were the rounds where we started to see more 2027 picks, like you said, because it's easier now to take the current assets and compare them with these projections in 2027 and feel a little more confident in them, right? We always get happy when we're projecting 2027 and even the future classes, because of course, development and progression is always going to be linear. There's never going to be any setbacks or things like that, right? So that's the gamble in projecting, is that you don't always know what's going to happen. A lot can happen in a single year. Of course, just this time last year, Chris, everybody, us included, were saying that quarterbacks were going to be the strength of the 2026 rookie class. And almost instantaneously, that narrative shifted pretty quickly. So a lot can happen in over the course of the season. But looking at this now, man, Kewan Lacy went 301, and that's way too damn low. I don't know how he made it this far, even with the projection forward, because of the skill sets that he presents. He's more than a capable receiver out of the backfield, and he got a lot of work in Lane Kiffin's offense for Ole Miss last season. And even though Lane Kiffin's not there anymore, I think both of us, Chris, we can easily project him to get that, maybe not the same level of volume. He did have 307 rushing attempts all throughout the season with the playoffs combined. So maybe not like that level. And I think he's going to eat. He had over 1,500 yards rushing last season, 24 touchdowns. Like, it was ridiculous. 89 missed tackles forced, was second only behind Ahmad Hardy, who was my RB1. Maybe have to slide him down with the news. Unfortunately, if you haven't heard, Ahmad Hardy was shot attending a concert. And so our thoughts and prayers go out to him. But it's been like this battle between them, right, Chris, of RB1. Is it Kewan Lacy? Is it Ahmad Hardy? So what are your thoughts on that, Chris? Because I just was like, how did he make it this far?
Yeah, I mean, Hardy has been my RB1, and last episode he was taken already in the draft by me. So I love Hardy. I think he's fantastic. The metrics are all great, and we feel really bad about the unfortunate news. We'll see what this happens with the future of his, football career, not even fantasy career. I just hope he can get back on the field. I think he's super talented. I think there was a real shot that he had a first round potential as an NFL running back. We'll just see now. It's very sad, the news that he was shot at a concert. You never like to see that stuff happen. Kewan Lacy, I think, even though his coaching staff has fled Mississippi, I think he's still so talented. He's going to get a lot of opportunities to show the talent that he's made of. He's extremely fast. He's got some burst. He looks the complete running back at the NFL level, and he's going to dominate again this year, even in the SEC. Up next, we had Ben selecting TreVeyon Henderson, who was the only pick from these top 6 in the third round from last year's class, and even not from 2027. And Henderson's a guy who I've been kind of sour on just because I believe that Vrabel's coaching staff, and we think now Vrabel's still going to be there after the Super Bowl run, despite all of the off-field nonsense. I'm not going to dive into any of that. But despite all that, it seems like Vrabel's coaching staff is going to remain intact, and they love Ramondre Stevenson. They use Ramondre Stevenson a whole lot. So I was excited about Henderson. He was my second RB in last year's class behind Genty. He was my 103 pick behind Genty and Tet McMillan. I think TreVeyon Henderson's a very, very good running back, but I'm a little worried about his long-term outlook. So Ben took him here at 302. However, in a combined draft like we're doing with 3 classes, I think this is decent value for him.
Yeah, my only pushback, Chris, is I think that his long-term outlook is the positive part. I think it was the short-term narrative spinning that is baking into this evaluation. Perhaps I know it is for a lot of people, and with good reason overall, I think. But he still had over 900 rushing yards, right? And he got the receiving work. He's a threat to take it to the house on any given play, right? For whatever reason, he was in Vrabel's doghouse, which I don't know what all that's about, but he showed out when he was given opportunities. Now, was it always perfect? No, but he was a rookie, and I think just going forward, I could project him easily overtaking that running back room. I think he's the one that they invested in heavier. So we'll see. But even the production that he was outputting last season, maybe it wasn't relative to the expectations that we put on him as the pretty much consensus 103, 104, somewhere in that range of rookie drafts in 2025. I think he did pretty good, but maybe it just didn't hit the level of hype and expectations that us dynasty managers placed on him. But progression isn't always linear. I said it before, but I think going forward, I could see him taking a role. But 103, Chris, is someone that's pretty interesting, and that is Mr. Julian Sayin. Now, this was my pick, Chris, and I've talked about his deficiencies. I've talked about his flaws, right? Not being able to, at times, handle inside pressure. I always say pressure breaks pipes and it breaks young quarterbacks. And we saw that in the playoffs against Indiana. The inside pressure really got to him. But there's a lot of traits that translate to success at the next level. One of them is his quick processing, his quick release, and his just elite level accuracy. He was one of, if not the most accurate passer in the Power 4 last season. I'll have to check the numbers, but I know he was amongst the leaders. And because of that, I'm still in on him with the level of weapons that he has. We've talked about national exposure a lot on this podcast. We know that the Ohio State team is going to get a lot of that exposure. And look, if it doesn't work out, he's still got an extra year of eligibility, and he could declare in 2028 with a big season.
Without a doubt, yeah. And he's a guy who I've been in on even a year ago before he had even taken a snap, really, or meaningful snap in college football. Coming off the Will Howard National Championship, I really like Julian Sayin. I think he's extremely accurate. He has shown that he's more of a quarterback than just his receivers. Obviously, Carnell Tate went super early this year. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith is fantastic. You know what the history is of Ohio State wide receivers. But this is a guy who can really get them the ball. He looks poised. Even in his first year as a starter, he looks like a poised guy who could get the ball there. Doesn't necessarily have the rushing upside that some of these quarterbacks have that are maybe even coming up. But we love what we're seeing out of Julian Sayin, even me as a Penn State fan who hates to say that. Up next, I took Trey'Dez Green, and I'm just continuing my trend of hammering the tight ends. You know, I love these tight ends. Like I said at the top of the show, we're assuming this is tight end premium. I think Trey'Dez Green is fantastic. I like him a lot more than even Kenyon Sadiq, who was the consensus 101 in this year's class. And that's why I took him ahead of him here, because he's fantastic. Our friends at Devy Planet have compared him to Kyle Pitts, and we love Devy Planet. Those guys are great. Go follow them. But I'm not quite ready to put that level of talent on him, because Kyle Pitts was like generational tight end. What did he go? 104 to Atlanta, and he's slowly been creeping up a little bit. Every year he gets another touchdown, so he's just going to keep adding those touchdowns year after year. And this year, I think he's projected for 6, maybe. I don't know. It's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But yeah, Pitts is great. Trey'Dez Green is great. Not quite a Pitts level talent, but extremely good talent. Catches the ball extremely well in traffic, a contested catch machine, a big target. He's fast. He can go down there and do it. He looks exactly like what you want out of a modern day move tight end. I compare him a little bit more to like Darren Waller, who was a former wide receiver who converted to tight end, and he was a little bit of a late breakout himself. But that same type of production is something that I can see as a ceiling for Trey'Dez Green. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do here at LSU this year with Lane Kiffin at the reins. Up next, our boy Josh had picked Ryan Coleman Williams. And real quick, I want to give a shout out to our boy Josh and our boy Ben, who write for us on our Substack. So make sure that you are following our Substack. Great way to get a little bit of additional information on the Devy Dojo, not just us talking here, me and Dustin chatting away. You could get a little bit more written value out of the things that Josh does and Ben does, because they're both fantastic. But Ryan Coleman Williams is a guy who I have been down on, admittedly, because of the drops last year. Ty Simpson had come into the starting position and basically made Jeremy Bernard his number one go-to guy. And Jeremy Bernard is a fantastic talent. I've been very high on him for the history of the dojo. I'm so happy that he's a part of the Steelers now, because I think he's going to thrive there. He can do it all. So he's a fantastic wide receiver. But Ryan Williams is a guy who was, 102 wide receiver behind Jeremiah Smith just a year ago after his freshman breakout. And he just didn't look the part this year with some drops, some concentration issues. So I do think this is decent value at 305 for Ryan Coleman Williams, who has now added a name to his back plate there. But what are your thoughts, Dustin, on Ryan Coleman Williams?
Well, I mean, my first thoughts are on his deficiencies, and you noted them a little bit, right? The drops, rather. The technique refinement that he needs in order to make that adjustment, Chris, it wasn't just isolated to the 2025 football season. As that true freshman breakout, Ryan Coleman Williams displayed all of these red flags and knocks in his profile at the time. The only difference in the narrative spin was that, he has something called forgiving traits, that pirouette ability, the ability to just that springy nature in his jump to catch the balls, spinning off Georgia defenders as a 17-year-old true freshman breakout. We forgot about those drops. And in 2025, Ryan Coleman Williams did not have those highlight plays. And that is a big reason why you've seen some of his value dip. But again, giving you some Devy game theory. That's why we here at the Devy Dojo preach to really invest in these wide receivers, because even with the fall off, after coming off a tremendous freshman season to the season that he had as a sophomore, you haven't really seen his value dip too far. Now, in a mock like this where you have 3 classes combined, yeah, he fell a little bit. But in our 2027 mocks and even our Devy mocks, he's still selected within the first 2 rounds pretty consistently. So again, those wide receivers, they maintain that value. And what I'm looking most forward to this year for the Alabama Crimson Tide is seeing Ryan Coleman Williams, who's now adding that hyphen in his name to honor his mother. He's engaged, he's bulked up a little bit. And according to his camp reports, Chris, he's taken on more of a leadership role. So I'm very interested to see how that translates onto the season. The biggest question going into the season is, of course, going to be who's throwing him the football. We project true sophomore Kewan Russell to overtake that battle. And if it all works out and goes according to plan, we could see a big rise for Ryan Coleman Williams as he potentially could enter the 2027 NFL draft and really hit that level that we were projecting him after that incredible breakout season.
This is going to be a make or break year, of course, for his value, but this is a great spot to take him despite the deficiencies we've noted before. Up next, Ben took Isaac Brown, who is a running back that I really, really love because he's just so fast and explosive. He looks a lot like Devon Achane. However, that is the biggest knock on him is the size, right? And he's playing at Louisville. He's not necessarily getting the knocks that other guys can get in the Big Ten or the SEC, theoretically. So it's hard to project those guys that are a little bit shorter in stature at running back to become like real big threats in the NFL. But I do think because of his explosiveness, he's going to have a role in the modern day NFL running back rotation. He's going to have a shot to get drafted, probably not round one, but maybe if he's lucky, day two, somewhere in there, and get a role right off of the rip as a rookie.
I'm right there with you, Chris. I love Isaac Brown. I've been a day one Isaac Brown truther, man. And maybe it's my type. Like, I'm not as worried about those body types in the NFL. I think that we've seen enough number of these backs of this nature, of this stature, of this archetype truly have success in the modern NFL because they're not going to be run into the ground, right? Most teams employ a committee rotation, things of that nature for these guys so that they don't get burned out. And that's what you want, because you want Isaac Brown to be that explosive playmaker. And that's exactly what he does for Louisville in the Brian Brom offense. He's that proverbial threat to take it to the house on any given touch, which he's done numerous times. He led the country in elusive rating, I believe, for PFF, which is a really good metric that I like to look at. Paints the whole story of him, man. You talked about him being Achane. I don't know if his like lateral cutback ability is the same as Achane's, but he can hit Isaac Brown can hit his top speed so freaking quick. Whereas Achane is more of a building guy. Like as he's running, he's getting faster. Isaac Brown could just top speed. I believe PFF actually did a study on him saying that his acceleration to top speed was I think he was top, man. So very explosive athlete. Of course, can his body take the hits in the NFL? Yet to be determined, but I like this because this was a flag plant for Benny, right? Of course, looking at the board, another 2027 backs, we'll talk about him, but I'll just say it right here. He went above Jadan Baugh, who is probably most people's consensus RB3 in the 2027 class right now. So it's a little bit of a plant flag, and I love it, man. I'm here for it.
Without a doubt, yeah. And so quickly, we're going to recap those first 6 picks of the third round, and that was Kewan Lacy, TreVeyon Henderson, Julian Sayin, Trey'Dez Green, Ryan Williams, and Isaac Brown. And then going into the second half of the third round, we had Concepcion, 2026 rookie. 308, we had Travis Hunter, wide receiver of last year's class. 309, we had the aforementioned Jadan Baugh, next year's running back. 310, we had this year's Kenyon Sadiq, tight end of the New York Jets. We have 311, Drew Mestemaker, next year's quarterback. And we have 312, Mario Craver, next year's wide receiver. And I kind of love the way that these next 6 picks are laid out because Craver and Concepcion were teammates last year at Texas A&M. And it's kind of funny that we ended with Isaac Brown on the first 6 and we end 312 with Mario Craver, who was my pick, who I really enjoy, but kind of the same types of knocks on him. He's just a small guy. So can he hold up in the NFL? Who knows? But I love his metrics, man. All of the analytics, yards per out run, yards after catch. He just looks explosive. Yards per catch. He's a fantastic, explosive athlete who I feel like is going to get a real shot now with KC not in the Texas A&M locker room, now at the Browns, probably languishing there. We'll talk about him in a minute, but I'm excited about Craver. I don't want to jump all the way to 312, but it felt like a good little bookend there after we just talked about another small guy, albeit at a different position.
Yeah, you know how I feel about Mario Craver. I do have questions about his ability to be an NFL wide receiver, but he's a tremendous college wide receiver. And if you play C2C or CFF, he's a relatively productive wide receiver there for you. And I think that he's going to get a lot of that same low 8-out stuff because Marcel Reed is his quarterback, and he's not a very good quarterback. So he's going to like to dump it off to him and get him that work, man. But here at this value in the third round, I'm all over it, man. I think that that's a tremendous price to pay for this stab on Mario Craver, because if it all plays out right, he's a dog, man. Like, we got a short on it on our YouTube channel talking about it. He's a tremendous athlete. He's very explosive. I like him. Just do have some concerns about his translation to the NFL, but that's neither here nor there. We could talk about his former teammate there, Concepcion, who was my pick to start off this second half of this round. And look, at this point, I was looking at the 2027 guys, and I said, I already got known first round capital in this guy and a prospect that I really believe in, that I was high on pre-draft. and the landing spot has done nothing to really deter me. In fact, I might have talked myself into it a little bit, Chris. Just, if Todd Monken can stabilize the Browns, and maybe Deshaun Watson puts it all together. I don't know, man. I'm going to choose to trust in the talent. Maybe going forward, they select a quarterback in 2027, or maybe it all works out. But talking about pure talent, KC Concepcion right here is a smash compared to the others, because I know the draft capital as well. I know that you're a hater, Chris, so you're going to have a lot of thoughts on KC Concepcion. So just lay it on me, man.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been, I've relented a little bit. I've never been a big KC guy. I didn't love the route running as much as other people, including you, my lovely co-host. I, he got the first round capital. However, it's the Browns, and I'm also a little bit worried because Denzel Boston is a guy who I had ranked even higher than him coming into this class, and they landed on the same team. And as you mentioned, is it going to be Deshaun Watson throwing? Like, who's going to throw him the football? So there's a very narrow path to stardom, I think, for KC at this point. I'm not ever going to draft him. I didn't draft him in this draft. I'm not going to draft him in future drafts. I'm not going to draft him in rookie draft. I don't like this guy. I'm just not happy about it. And the Browns is the worst possible spot, in my opinion, for him, because I know people knock Judy, and they knock some of these other, like Tillman. They have some good wide receivers that are truly talented, and they go to Cleveland and they die. It's over when you land in Cleveland, unfortunately. And now they have just done exactly what they've done for multiple draft classes now, redundancy at a position in the draft. And it's so sad, because if they were just redundant of taking actual good quarterbacks, maybe we wouldn't have these issues. But they redundantly took Gabriel and Shedeur last year, and they're not great. And now we're talking about a land where maybe Deshaun Watson, after years of not playing football, becomes their best option at quarterback. It's scary, man. It's not good. I don't expect any of these guys to put up real life fantasy production, which is ultimately what we're talking about here. Maybe he's a good wide receiver. Maybe I'm wrong, but I have zero faith in him actually putting up fantasy points for our teams, unfortunately. But speaking of that, I took Travis Hunter right after you took Concepcion. And Travis Hunter might not ever put up fantasy points for us, but I felt like he was a good value here because I know that he is an exciting wide receiver. I know that he's capable. He had a couple big games. He went over 100 yards already in the NFL with a touchdown. So that's why at 308, I felt like Travis Hunter was a very good pick, because I don't believe all this nonsense, this talk about him only playing defense. This is a great buying opportunity right now for Travis Hunter. The problem is nobody's selling, because everybody has invested so much into Travis Hunter that they are not willing to give up a second round pick, especially in this draft, for Travis Hunter. So it's tough to get him at a decent value and use that buying opportunity to your advantage. But I know that he's very talented. We've seen the reception perception on him. We've seen him do it already in the NFL. We know he can be a good wide receiver. It's just a little bit of a crowded room, kind of the same thing we just talked about with KC. Parker Washington is truly a good wide receiver. And Jacoby Myers, they didn't acquire him for no reason. And they have Brian Thomas Jr., who's another guy who I'm kind of a hater on, but he's already proved it as well at the NFL. So I just felt like this was a good value at this point at 308. Based on the fact that I know that he can produce at the NFL level, and I have more faith in him than Devy picks that I'm projecting.
Listen, you almost convinced me on the KC Concepcion stuff. Like, I was like, man, he's making a lot of good points. And then you went out there and selected Travis Hunter. So now I know you're just full of shit out there. You're just a hater, man. Look, at least KC Concepcion is an actual wide receiver. Like, I don't have to worry if he's maybe going to play defense the majority of his career. So whatever. But moving on there, right after that, at 309 was Jadan Baugh. I briefly touched on him. I do want to talk about him here because he is my RB3 in the 2027 class. So I think that, again, like I said before, I think that's consensus at this point. But I want the record to state that I was on Jadan Baugh before the masses. I've been touting this guy for a long time because he's an athletic freak. 228 pounds, 231. He's somewhere in that range depending on where you look. But he's faster than you would think. Like, he's made Bruce Feldman's freak list for a reason. He's an underrated receiver out of the backfield, and he can run with power when he wants to. I mean, the big frame, you would think that would be his biggest strength. It's actually his biggest weakness. And what I noted on film, I did a pretty extensive film dive on Jadan Baugh. For all the talent in the world, what's holding him back from true superstardom is he falls in love with this lateral agility. For a big guy, he's got some wiggle in his hips, and he can make a defender miss. If you look at his missed tackles force numbers, the raw numbers in PFF, they're relatively high. His problem is, though, Chris, sometimes he just needs to lower his pads and knock an MFer right into the shadow realm. He needs to knock him over, put him in the grave, and he falls in love with that movement. Same thing I saw in Mike Washington Jr.'s film. I'm like, dude, sometimes you just need to lower the pads and take him out. So if he can do that, though, in the John Summerall system now that they're going to run for Florida, he's talked about, look, Jadan Baugh needs more touches. If he got 20 carries in a game, we need to up those numbers to 30. And if he holds true on that this year, Jadan Baugh could be in for a really big season, because outside of him, they got some big names at wide receiver in Dallas Wilson, Vernell Brown, but we don't know about the quarterback. Jadan Baugh might legitimately be their best course of action to get real production and move the ball. And look, a lot of Florida fans last year, Chris, were saying, just run the damn Baugh. Just run it with the kid, man. He's incredible out there. Get him more work. It's an absolute atrocity that he didn't get more carries last season, in my humble opinion. So he's got some things to work on, but dude is so incredible. He's young too. I believe he'd entered the draft. I think he'd still be 20 when he was drafted, assuming he declares for 2027.
Yeah, to quote the legendary Michael Jordan, the ceiling is the roof. This guy is fantastic. He has all of the exact type of attributes that NFL coaches want in a running back. So it's really just about how much can he produce here this year to really elevate his value. And if you wanted to tell me that he's your RB1 in next year's class, I wouldn't knock you. I totally get it. Next, we had Kenyon Sadiq, which was one of Ben's picks at 310. And there's a reason that me, the guy who loves all these tight ends, didn't pick him, because I'm not necessarily the biggest fan. Honestly, I think that even though in rookie drafts I'm taking him over Stowers because of value, I don't know. I don't love it. I thought Stowers was the better tight end coming out of this class. I think he's a better receiver. I think Sadiq is slightly bit of a screen merchant. If you really look at the way he's caught passes and broke it down, he's obviously fast. We saw what he did at the combine, extremely fast, the fastest ever, I think, for tight ends. But now he landed at the New York Jets, where there's so many mouths to feed, man. And who's going to throw him the ball? It's not Cade Klubnik. Geno Smith? I don't know. It's tough, man. It's hard to project a future where Sadiq is a force for fantasy football.
Yeah, I'm right there again with you, Chris. And look, if you fall into the draft cap trap, that's how you end up with Kyle Pitts for years. And you're just saying, well, come on, man. They took him 4th overall. They invested a lot in him. He has to be good, right? Not saying that Kenyon Sadiq isn't good. He just has holes in his game, and we have questions about the landing spot. I don't know if I trust the talent enough to truly escape that hellhole of a situation. Maybe the Jets turn it all around. They have 3 first-round picks in 2027. Maybe they use it to move up for their choice of the quarterback later in 2027. Maybe they supplement it with other playmakers. I don't know, but it is the Jets, so it's hard to trust, and I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm right there with you. Stowers was my tight end 1, and I don't even think that Kenyon Sadiq was necessarily the best tight end on that Oregon Ducks team last season. We'll talk about him a little later. But Chris, right after there, 311, my pick, again, from this 11 spot, if you look at rounds 1, 2, 3, and 4, I selected all quarterbacks. A little bit of a spoiler. I selected all quarterbacks every time because I don't know how you guys kept letting these fall to me. I think it might be some of our Devy bias where we preach fade quarterbacks. But y'all, this is a dynasty draft right here, right? We're comparing them all on the boards. And I went with Drew Mestemaker, quarterback out of North Texas last season. Of course, he followed his head coach to Oklahoma State, and he was one of the greatest stories in all of college football last season. I'll continue to say it every time I talk about this kid because it's truly mind-boggling. He didn't play a single snap of high school varsity football from the quarterback position. He played a little bit of safety out there, took no snaps as a quarterback. And Patrick Mahomes, QB coach, his personal QB coach was like, hey, Eric Morris, I got this dude who's going to be the next superstar. And Eric Morris said, all right, well, show me his tape. And he was like, that's the thing. He ain't got no tape. You're just going to have to trust me. This kid is great. And look, from the arm angles that he's able to throw, he's tall in nature. He's a little lanky. Maybe he needs to add some functional mass. But his release and his arm talent and the strength and the grip that he could get on this ball is truly incredible. I saw him standing in his own goal line, running to his right, throwing across his body to the opposite sideline, and he had a completion. That is mind-boggling arm talent that you only see in the likes of like a Josh Allen, a John Elway, people like that. Now, we have questions about can it translate to the next level? Upping from North Texas to Oklahoma State. It's the Big 12, so while it's getting better, there's still some lighthearted defenses in there, I think. And so I think that this is a good litmus test for Drew Mestemaker for us to evaluate and see, can he take that next jump? Can he handle the competition at this level? So I'm really excited to see him. If he does take that next step, if he can prove to us that he could play at this level, Chris, there's no way in hell you're getting him here. People are already in love with this kid. He's been a CFF darling. He's going to rise because people love this kid. So to get him here, I think that this is a good projection into his future and where I feel like he could be. So at 3'11", hell yeah, I'm all over that Drew Mestemaker.
Yeah, I like this pick. And I just saw recently a post, I think Big Ben Roethlisberger was talking about his wife graduated from college or something, after all these years, yada, yada, yada. But I was thinking it's kind of a similar career arc, not a player comp. Do not roast me in the comments. Not a player comp. But Ben didn't play until his high school senior year because he was behind the coach's son. Mestemaker didn't play at all in high school. And then Big Ben went to Miami, Ohio, and obviously got drafted first round by the Pittsburgh Steelers and had a fantastic Hall of Fame career. It feels kind of like that, where he's just shown so much heart and so much ability with his arm talent that he could really step up and make a name for himself. And I'm not sure that NFL GMs really cared. NFL scouts really care about the level of talent that you're playing against, because if you isolate him and see exactly what he's doing and where he can throw the ball, he looks fantastic. So this was a great value at 311. At 312, we already talked about it. I just took Mario Craver. That's my boy. So we'll do a quick recap. 307, Casey Concepcion. 308, Travis Hunter. 309, Jadan Baugh. 310, Kenyon Sadiq. 311, Drew Mestemaker. And 312, Mario Craver. So now we're moving to the fourth round. Starting with our boy Josh. He took CJ Carr, next year's quarterback, who I felt was great value. 402, Ben took Omar Cooper Jr. You took Charlie Becker, the next Indiana receiver, at 403. At 404, I continued my tight end love with Eli Stowers, who I talked about a little bit earlier. 405, Justice Haynes. And 406, Tyler Shough, who I felt was a fantastic value. I kind of forgot about him. I don't know if it's because he's old. He's an old guy. I was like, I forgot he was a rookie from last year. I probably would have taken him early. I thought that was that might have been the pick of the draft, honestly, from Ben. Tyler Shough has shown us that he is a decent, capable, talented quarterback at the NFL. And not only that, but the Saints are really building around him. Obviously, they took Tyson. They still have Olave. They're really trying to do whatever they can to make him successful. And Kellen Moore is trying to make this guy the future stud of the NFL. So 406 for Tyler Shough, even in a combined draft, I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, it's a home run pick right there. When we're talking about the known assets and stuff, he gets a little stink to his value because of the age, because of the past injury history, like a very long and extensive injury history. So he gets a little bit of a knock, but we've seen him perform in the NFL, and he led a pretty talentless team to some success, right? Our boy Rocco has always been shouting about, and shout out our guy Rocco, the Fourth and Fantasy podcast. Make sure you follow them as well. He's our guy, man. We love Rocco, we love Hunter, and we love those boys. But he's been shouting his praises from the beginning, man. And I listened, man. I started watching him towards the end of the season, looked at some of his stats, and I said, hey, you know what? This kid's pretty good, and he's got a really good play caller and offensive designer out there in Kellen Moore. So big, like New Orleans is starting to look up, right? We talked shit about their drafting the last few years, and these last two draft classes, they've had some pretty good success, I would say. So I like the direction that they're going in terms of pure value. I'm with you. I think this is probably one of the better picks to get a starting NFL quarterback whose value has risen in Dynasty. To get him in the 4th round of this combined mock, absolute steal.
Yeah, I probably would have taken him over probably 106 for current rookie class, 2026 rookie class, right behind the big 3 wide receivers and Fernando Mendoza and of course Jeremiah Love. I would happily trade that pick for Tyler Shough. I think he's looking good. He's a certain value at this point. I think he's still a little bit underrated. But at 401, we had C.J. Carr, quarterback of Notre Dame, who is another guy that I feel like is a decent value here. We've talked about him a lot on the dojo before. I think he showed a lot of heart last year. I think he's shown that he can be a real leader of the NFL or of a offense, NCAA offense, but projecting to the NFL. He's got arm talent, maybe not quite as much as guys like Dante Moore or the aforementioned Drew Mestemaker, but he's a talented quarterback who seems to know where he needs to put the ball and he knows how to run the offense well. The knock, of course, would be he had 2, at this point, 1st-round running backs kind of leading the charge. So they did a lot of running the ball last year. The question is really, can he get the ball out to these receivers? And a lot of them aren't big name receivers, right? So Notre Dame lives in this fantasy land where they don't really have a projected schedule as far as like Big Ten or SEC. They kind of play whoever they want, which I still think is BS. But I don't even know who they're playing this year. But it's going to be a big year for CJ Carr because he has a chance. He's like a sneaky Heisman play, honestly.
Yeah, it's going to be, how does the offensive look? Mike Denbrock he's the offensive coordinator there for Notre Dame. Kind of runs a vanilla offense, more of a pro style. He likes to establish the run, and even though they're losing Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, obviously out of that backfield, man, they recruit so heavily at that position and the offensive line. There's so many guys willing to step up. Still got a nice Williams coming in. A couple of the freshmen recruits there. I don't want to get into all that, but they got dudes in the backfield still. So I still think you're going to see a heavy dose of running, but they did bring in Mylan Graham from the transfer portal, right? They brought Jamie French in as well. Now, these are guys, year 1-0, so it's tough to project them going forward. Historical data is hard to argue against. It really is. So odds are stacked against them, but is it impossible? No. We'll see. If CJ Carr is really that guy that can elevate the talent around him and they give him more opportunities, maybe he puts it all together. Because I would like to say, Chris, I think this is the most talented quarterback that Notre Dame has had since Brady Quinn. And that's showing my unk status right here, talking about Brady Quinn as a Notre Dame Fighting Irish quarterback. I remember watching him, man. So I'm not in love with CJ Carr. I think that there's some guys that weren't even taken in this draft I might take over him, but he's got that name value. He's a Notre Dame guy. Like, all they got to do is win a few games and they'll get in the playoffs. Apparently they don't even have to play the Trojans because they're Notre Dame and they do whatever the hell they want. But I'm not going to talk about Notre Dame today. I'll keep it professional, Chris. So
I would love to just go on a whole Notre Dame rant, but we're not going to do that right now. Omar Cooper Jr. was a pick. Again, I felt like Ben has doing a little bit of good value here towards the end of this draft because, as I just mentioned, I would have taken Tyler Shough a little bit earlier than that. But Omar Cooper is a talented wide receiver. You and I both had him pretty highly ranked. He's a yards after the catch machine. This guy gets the football and he just goes, dude. He's a dog as soon as he gets the ball in his hands. I know that we just talked bad about the Jets. We don't know who's throwing him, but it's easy to project a future where he's the number one guy on the New York Jets, where Garrett Wilson is wherever the hell else he is. They're pounding the ball with Breece Hall because they just signed him. And they have, theoretically, a quarterback in the future who can actually get the ball to Omar Cooper Jr. So I enjoyed the fact that they took him late in the 1st round. I think that he's a fantastic wide receiver. I think that was a good landing spot for him when you're projecting and squinting and saying maybe in the future. So I wouldn't expect a lot out of him year 1, but I'm not willing to say that that's as bad of a landing spot as, for example, KC.
And I'll agree with you, Chris. The Jets seem like a snake-bitten franchise as well. But low-key, man, I really enjoyed this draft that they had. I think that they, from an organizational standpoint of building a team, roster construction, I really like what they did. And so that was 3 first-round picks in 2026. The New York Jets also have 3 first-round picks in 2027. So maybe they get Omar Cooper Jr., a quarterback in that class. They got a lot of possibilities now, just having those liquid assets in the draft picks. Maybe they trade up to who they want. Maybe they trade for a proven asset player. Given a lot of options. That's why we like collecting future first in Dynasty as well, because of those liquid assets. Gives you a lot more options. So maybe, Jets will pull it out. But again, like I talked about with our guy Swerve in the Discord today, still the Jets, right? So going to be questions about it. But
still the Jets.
We both love Omar Cooper Jr. I was talking about him again today in the Discord. I wrote him up in the rookie guide. I absolutely love him, and I think that he could smash if all goes according to plan. I think that he could dominate the targets in the middle of the field. He is going to be competing with Kenyon and Sadiq, so it's going to be interesting to see how Frank Reich, the offensive coordinator, really designs this offense. I know historically he's run a lot of 12 personnel, but he's had other stops where he's ran 11 personnel, where that's 3 wide receivers on the field and only 1 tight end. So we'll see kind of the concepts and what they run this year. Really excited, but he's a guy that I do believe in the talent, and I low-key, I like enough of what the Jets are doing that, I'm in. I have a lot of Omar Cooper Jr. in drafts because you could get him relatively late, the back end of the first, top of the second round of your Dynasty rookie drafts. Man, I'm all over that.
Yeah, without a doubt. He's a great value at this point. I like the talent. I like where he's going in rookie drafts. If we already bashed Notre Dame a little bit. If we could just bash the entire AFC East real quick, I know that Tom Brady was there for all those years. Dolphins haven't even won a playoff game since before 9/11. That's insane. The Jets haven't been in the playoffs in 15 years? Something crazy. It's insane to me that
Mark Sanchez and all them.
Yeah, the Sanchez. The AFC East, man, it's just been brutal. Even the Bills were so bad for so long. So maybe we should start questioning whether Tom Brady's really the GOAT or if he just had. I'm just kidding. I'm not doing that. But his teammate, Omar Cooper Jr.'s teammate, Charlie Becker, is up and coming wide receiver from Indiana. Obviously, he's going to face off with Nick Marsh, who we took in last week's episode early on. But this was one of your selections, and I really liked this pick because I think he came into his own, especially at the end of the year as they were running towards a national championship.
Yeah, of course, you're referring to Charlie Becker, man, and that's been one of my guys, Chris, and he's so undervalued, but he's so good. You really saw him come on towards the end of the season, and in that playoff run where he really came on, man, like Mr. Reliable. I think that in the 2027 class, so if you're grouping all these wide receivers together, he pretty easily, for me, has the most sure hands, right? He has that sideline awareness. I've talked about it a few times. People knock him for his athleticism, but Duke can high point the ball. He can climb that proverbial ladder, and he's going to come down with the football. You don't got to worry about him dropping it, man. He's going to put his body on the line. He really meshed well with Fernando Mendoza, and he's going to take over Elijah Surratt's role, most likely out there, as their primary X-wide receiver. And I think that he can do everything that Elijah Surratt did, which led to 15 touchdowns, and he could do it even better. We don't have Fernando Mendoza throwing the ball. We got Josh Hoover, another transfer there from TCU. So we'll see how that works. But their skill sets, Chris, we've talked about it a few times. It really aligns because Josh Hoover, what we know about him, man, he's going to slang that thing. He's going to throw it up there for grabs. And when you guys got guys like Nick Marsh and now Charlie Becker, it's like wheels up. It's like a match made in heaven. And I don't think that Indiana skips a beat. And they won the freaking national championship last year. So if it all meshes well and according to plan and how I project, Charlie Becker, man, I mean, he's a sneaky play here. I've gotten him pretty late in Devy drafts too. It's like people just forgot about my next exciting wide receiver out there.
Yeah, super sneaky. And you mentioned it. Hoover is the new quarterback of the Indiana Hoosiers, and he throws the ball extremely well on the sidelines specifically. So this is going to be a match made in heaven, I think. We all project Nick Marsh and Hoover to have a nice connection, and Nick Marsh is a fantastic wide receiver in his own right, but Becker is staying there. He's in the same system. He's going to be the veteran in that locker room now that both Omar Cooper and Elijah Surratt have left for the NFL. So definitely exciting. I love this pick, especially as you mentioned, you could get him late in Devy drafts. You can get him very late, I think, in CFF drafts. I've taken him a few times, and I'm excited about the future for him. Up next at 404, I took Eli Stowers. We talked about him a little bit. I think he was the best tight end in this draft. He's the best receiving talent for sure. The biggest question mark for him, of course, is redundancy, because he's not really a tight end. He's kind of more of a slot wide receiver. And they also selected Mekhi Lemon. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. It's very clear that the Philadelphia Eagles are trying to change the offense overall. Sean Mannion's coming in. He's going to change things. They took Gizzard from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to become their passing coordinator. They don't want Hurts doing the things he did before. There's a lot of ballyhoo about maybe Hurts can't throw over the middle of the field. He's going to have to, man. With Mekhi Lemon and with Eli Stowers, and if they get rid of A.J. Brown, as we're projecting, Devontae Smith is fantastic over the middle of the field. So we'll have to figure out what this looks like. So long term, it's like confusing. There's a lot of redundancy right there with this offense. However, if you're betting on talent, this is a perfect spot to take him at 404, which is why I did it. At 405, Justice Haynes. Josh took him. Fantastic running back. I feel like he would have went higher if he was still at Michigan. However, he transferred to Georgia Tech, which is something we've talked about before on the dojo. Not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's not, because Georgia Tech, where he transferred to now from Michigan, they have a really good rushing system. He's likely to still be productive. Playing in the ACC, not the best competition, and Georgia Tech was a really good program last year. I believe they made it 8-0 before they lost their first game. Point is, they're a well-coached team. It's a good system, and On3 had a really tremendous article about Justice Haynes explaining why he took that route, why he transferred to Georgia Tech. Of course, it's more of a homecoming for him. It's his home state. Gets to play with family where they're able to see him. And he talked about how the coaching staff said they really want to utilize him as a receiving option out of the backfield, which was always Justice Haynes' biggest knock in his profile, is that at Michigan just didn't catch the ball, right? Like he's that, again, a threat to take it to the house on any given play. Our good friend Chev termed the phrase home run Haynes to describe his rushing ability. So if he could go to a place now, Chris, where he can expand on that aspect of his game, I think that you're going to see him shoot up boards, because he's a guy that we seem to have forgotten about. When we were doing all these drafts last year, when we were doing our Devy drafts, when we were doing our belt colored tiered system, Justice Haynes is a guy that we really liked. We didn't forget about Justice, man, and I'm really rooting for him. I hope that we see that spike in value again, that artificial value, because the talent's still there. That he's that same 5-star dude with NFL bloodlines running through him that he's always been, right? He's going to get, if anything, his production profile is going to look better.
Yeah, much like I just said about Drew Mestemaker, I don't necessarily think that GMs are going to care that he transferred quote unquote down, because he's such a talented running back. He was already at Alabama, didn't get a lot of shot, but he's shown at Michigan what he can do. And you and I have both talked about he has more receiving upside there. So we're hoping that he can actually showcase that here at Georgia Tech this year and become a highly drafted running back this year, which I think is in his projected outcomes. And then at 406, we talked about Tyler Shough already. Great pick by Ben, fantastic value. So just to recap those first 6, 401, CJ Carr, 402, Omar Cooper Jr., 403, Charlie Becker, 404, Eli Stowers, 405, Justice Haynes, and 406, Tyler Shough. So to round out our lovely 2025, 2026, 2027 rookie draft, we had Jamari Johnson at 407, Ty Simpson at 408, Cam Skattebo at 409, TJ Moore at 410, Sam Leavitt at 411, and Caleb Hawkins at 412. Dustin, I'm going to kick it to you because I would have taken Jamari Johnson because of my love for tight ends in this kind of format, but you beat me to it at 407.
Yeah, man, I had to rush to the podium because I knew you were going to be hammering those tight ends all night again. So, look, I had to get in front of you and take it from you. Jamari Johnson, I talked about him. In my opinion, he was the best tight end on the Oregon Ducks team. And now, Chris, he gets a chance to be the dude there. So really excited for him. He's another guy that down that stretch, like if you include the playoffs and that whole stretch, he had over 500 receiving yards playing alongside Kenyon Sadiq. I believe he only had like 31 targets though. So he was incredibly efficient. He's a big dude. He's over 257 pounds, but he can run legit routes out there. Now, don't get it twisted. He's not just some inline blocking tight end. He's shown the ability to be a move tight end in this system. So very excited about him. I think in looking in Devy drafts, the value, you see Trey'Dez Green going really high. And then I get the guy much later in drafts in Jamari Johnson, who I think is going to be fighting with Trey'Dez Green for tight end 1 in the 2027 draft class. So just in terms of pure value, he's been the tight end that I like to take in Devy drafts specifically, just because you can get him so much later. A lot of people aren't really talking about him. I think that as we continue and others now are talking about him, you're going to see his name rise a little bit. But love Jamari Johnson, man. Former 3-star guy. He had to battle and earn his way and transfer to Oregon, and now waited his turn, was still productive alongside an NFL tight end. And now it's wheels up for me because he's going to get that opportunity this season.
Yeah, and he was extremely productive even on the field with Kenyon Sadiq last year. So that was a great pick. Much like you talked about, good value here when you're talking about him versus Green. Same like we were discussing with Stowers versus Sadiq in this year's class. So that was a great pick. I was just talking with our friend Tennessee Nick in our Discord. Make sure you're following us in the Devy Dojo Discord. We were talking about Dante Moore, and I was like, I'm a former hater, but he's looking good, man, and he's going to get Johnson the ball. So excited about the future. Ty Simpson is a guy who I took at 408, and I took this pick, and I know you guys were all ragging on me. I took him because of one simple fact. The Rams used first-round capital on him, and he's a quarterback. So we know there's nothing coming out of him this year, right? Stafford's probably going to retire at the end of the year. Maybe. We'll see what happens. But they wanted this guy enough to use a fairly early first-round pick on him when they shouldn't have, because they should be doing everything possible to win a Super Bowl, which is kind of uncharacteristic of them, because that's what they did when they won a Super Bowl with Stafford. The legendary F them picks, what's the GM's name? Stroud.
Les Snead,
yeah. F them picks, That's what they should have done, but they went ahead and they took Ty Simpson, who's a guy that I wasn't a big believer in, but I'm just going pure value, baby. 408 here in this combined, I'll do it. We're projecting all of these quarterbacks to be XYZ. Simpson is XYZ. He is a first-round pick. He is in a good franchise. He's going to be sitting behind a Hall of Fame quarterback, learning from one of the best coaches in the NFL. I'm excited about taking him here at 408. I'm a little bit surprised that you guys let him fall to
me. It has to do with one number, Chris, and it's 1-5. 15 career starts is very, very concerning to me. Again, when I was talking about year 1-0, it's hard to argue against historical data, and the data is pure as day. If you have like at least less than 20 starts, your path to relevancy in the NFL is very, very slim. The list of quarterbacks with those same number of starts, it's pretty daunting, man. It's not a fun list. So I do have concerns. I also have legitimate concerns that McVay didn't even really want this pick. I know that the claims have been refuted. I don't care, because I watched the videos in the moment before everybody was spewing all their nonsense. He didn't look too excited about it. It looked like this was a situation where he and Les Snead disagreed about the picks. Allegedly, there's family ties between Les Snead and Ty Simpson's family, and he was fed info that he was going to be, a first-round pick by the Rams no matter what. Which then you're like, okay, well, that makes sense why after Alabama wouldn't let you come back, why you didn't enter the transfer portal and you so confidently entered the NFL draft. If you already knew it was money in the bank, well, then, of course, man, I don't fault you. Go and get it. But from getting off of all that, Chris, and going to pure process play here in this mock draft, I understand the reasoning, right? It goes to a good team, really good offensive system, and a really good play caller. You think if he sits on the bench for a couple of seasons, he could develop and do all this. I get it. If I'm taking Ty Simpson, I'm honestly drafting him in rookie drafts to potentially flip him down the road, because I don't believe in the long-term sustained production. There's no guarantee that if the Rams do really good this season and win the Super Bowl, that McVay wouldn't retire with Stafford. And then you're left with like, okay, well, now who's taking over? So I always trust my process, my evaluation. And there was a pocket in time where Ty Simpson looked like he was a legitimate first-round quarterback, in my opinion. Then the injuries happened. I could talk myself out of it and say he's still good. But at the end of the day, Chris, I don't argue with that data, which is why I'm a little shocked that you are. But I can't look past it.
Again, you talked about value. Hey, let's just say at least I didn't take Drew Aller here, right? because it's kind of the same scenario. I have
Yeah.
more faith in Drew Aller as an actual NFL quarterback than I do in Ty Simpson. But given all of the things that we just detailed, I like this value for Ty Simpson. He's coming in at an earlier ADP than even Omar Cooper Jr., who was taken earlier in this draft. So I was just like, I'm doing it. I'm hitting the button here at 408. And we're getting to the end of the draft. I'd rather take a bet on a guy who I know is already in the NFL, already in a good situation. We'll see what the future holds. Like you said, I'll probably flip him. I would never keep him forever because I'm kind of with you. Cam Skattebo was up next at 409. Josh took him. Again, probably good value because of the things we just talked about with Ty Simpson. He's already in the NFL. We've seen him produce. The real question is, A, there's a new coaching staff, and B, the question for me is, this guy is a maniac. Is he going to hold up in the NFL? They need to rein him in. And obviously, this is a coaching staff that just had Derrick Henry. But Derrick Henry is a true one-of-one freak of nature. That guy can beat people into the ground, and he'll probably do it until he's 40. I hope he goes in the WWE after this because, like, he's a fantastic athlete. This guy could murder people for the rest of time, and nobody would bat an eye. Cam Skattebo is not that type of guy. He had great metrics at Arizona State. Missed tackles forced is the one that we always cite. He was fantastic at that. He's been a very productive athlete on the field. I didn't expect it to translate as well as it did once he got to New York, but it did turn out very well. However, he got himself hurt by just being a true maniac. So my question is, can he hold up? Can somebody rein him in and tell him, please quit running headfirst into everybody?
You just got to be tougher, Chris. Concussions aren't real, man. Real men don't get concussions. Fake news. But no, I mean, all the points you said, I have nothing really to add. Great pick there. I'm going to kind of just go along and we'll rapid fire these ones. TJ Moore, we've talked about him a lot. All the talent in the world. Questions are going to be that offense around him. Chris Vicinha is looking like he's going to be quarterback one for Clemson. Then I have really no confidence in my projection for these wide receivers for Clemson. Kind of goes down the hole. I'm a little concerned about that team, honestly, but all the talent in the world, I think that this is a good value to get him late in drafts because he was a really high-end 5-star recruit. I mean, he was still pretty productive. I think he had over 800 receiving yards last season. Just, the stink of the Clemson season really, really is wearing down on him. But then I took Sam Leavitt at 411, and we had a pretty fun little talk about it. Would you rather have Ty Simpson or Sam Leavitt in a vacuum? I think most people in the Discord when we were talking about it said Ty Simpson for the draft cap reasons. But I don't want people to forget what Sam Leavitt looked like when he was fully healthy in 2024, slinging the rock to Jordan Tyson there for Arizona State. Last season was a tough one for him. He missed a lot of time with the injury, didn't get to complete his season. So now he got the bag from LSU and Lane Kiffin, and he's going to go into an offense with a play caller in Lane Kiffin. With however you feel about Lane Kiffin, he really knows how to make his quarterbacks productive and comfortable in this system, and they're likely to going to win games. I think that he has that rushing utility too that people probably have forgotten about. The ability to really sidearm the football and throw from any platform is his superpower. So we'll see in this RPO-based offense that Lane Kiffin's going to run. Maybe he shows out, and I think that Sam Leavitt is a good bet to be a guy that could really raise that value again. Because I think that the community is sleeping on Sam Leavitt a little bit after being so high on him.
Yeah, I would agree. This is a great opportunity for him to upgrade his value transferring to LSU with Lane Kiffin. And just to speak on these last 4 picks, Skattebo, Moore, Leavitt, and Hawkins, when you're at the end of the draft, just take the guys that you believe in. That's just general theory. No matter what kind of draft it is, just take the guys that you believe in because you're not sure that you can get guys after you lose your draft picks and the draft is over. But Sam Leavitt, I thought that was a decent pick here to kind of, based on that theory, round out your draft. I took Caleb Hawkins, and you could basically copy and paste what we said about Drew Mestemaker because he followed him to Oklahoma State. We're going to have to see what he can do, but he was one of the most productive running backs in college football last year, much like Mestemaker is one of the most productive quarterbacks last year. So it's kind of exciting that they've taken the entire offense and just copy pasted them into a new a Big 12 offense there. So we'll see what he does. I wrote a whole article on Caleb Hawkins back in like October on our Substack. So go check that out. He's a fantastic running back. I'm very excited to see what he can do. I'm hoping that he's the next Ahmad Hardy who can transfer from a small school to a big school and prove that he's worth it. But that wraps it up. We'll just quickly recap. 407, Jamari Johnson. 408, Ty Simpson. 409, Cam Skattebo. 410, TJ Moore. 411, Sam Leavitt. 412, Caleb Hawkins. We appreciate you guys for hanging out with us these last 2 weeks. This was a really fun exercise, just trying to combine 3 rookie classes and see exactly where everybody lands. And I think it's proven a little bit that 2027 is a class to look out for.
Yeah, it's got a lot of names. Like we always talk about, is the class overhyped? Probably is a little bit at this point, honestly, but there's, for good reason, there's a lot of good names with projection that we could confidently say are going to be some high-end picks and very, very relevant for your dynasty roster. So I'm glad that we did this, Chris. I'm with you, man. It was so much fun just to put them all on the board, right? And compare the different aspects of where they are, the trajectory in their careers in the NFL, entering their draft season. It was a lot of fun, man. A lot of Devy concepts introduced. And hopefully if you never played Devy, this kind of opens your eyes a little bit. If you've never played Devy and you're curious, well, you need to hit the link in the description of this episode and join the free Devy Dojo Discord. We're talking Devy, Dynasty, C2C, CFF, all those degenerative formats all day long. We're talking game theory, strategy. We're scouting these guys with all 22. Like we do a lot. We provide a lot of stuff for free. All we ask is that you just like this video, you subscribe to all of the content, and you really join the community, man. It's been a tremendous blessing. We're rapidly approaching 1 year of the Devy Dojo being a podcast, and it's just flown by. The community that we've gotten right now has been tremendous, and it's the best part of doing this, Chris. So with that said, Chris, we wrapped it up, 4 total rounds. I hope that you enjoyed this content. Like I said, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and stay tuned for next week's episode. But until then, remember to trust your training.